Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Digital Artcast. My name is Gordon and I'll be your host on this interview today. Another great artist we've got on to talk about his career and all things just epic in general about the art industry and making games. Thanks again to people who've been subscribing and checking out the podcast. We are nearly at 2,000 subscribers. And again, if you're listening to this in any other service, make sure you check out our YouTube channel. You can also find us on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, the kind of whole lot. This guest in particular, I think is really interesting because I've tried to get him on a few times and just scheduling conflicts have kind of meant that we've maybe not been able to connect. But luckily tonight he had a little bit of time to come and talk to me. So without further ado, let me introduce Nick Carver. What up, Nick?
Hello. Thanks for having me on. Glad to be here.
Of course. Thank you, man. Thank you. So we met in a kind of a really weird circumstance where I think it was last year, right? Industry Workshops 2018.
Yeah. I have a vague recollection of whichever evening that was.
Yeah, definitely evening. We were talking, I think we were kind of moving with the crowd and I kind of bumped into you and we were talking about, I think maybe for 2 seconds I had gone into the podcast or something like that. Or I think at the time I'd actually just interviewed Mark Burnett and we'd somehow got to talking about it and then you were just like, oh yeah, I used to work with Mark. And I was like, what the fuck?
Small world, small
industry. Yeah, where did that go? Because obviously I think it's just weird when you find, you go to those events and you could be talking to someone, you know, for like half an hour and then they're like, oh yeah, I've worked at this huge big company and I'm this amazing artist that's worked for 20 years in the industry. And you're like, what? You know what I mean? So
it's just a regular guy.
Just a regular guy like us. No, I done that. I think it was THU last year when I went and I was talking to Shuzo, who runs Polygon Pictures.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him for like maybe 30 minutes. And then I was like, all right, yeah, man. And what do you do? You're an artist? And he's like, oh, yeah, I run this company called Polygon. I was like, oh, fuck. Okay, I know who you are. Jesus Christ. So yeah, that happens a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a testament to the fact that most people are pretty chill and pretty down to earth, and there's not a huge amount of ego going around normally. So people, are just happy to chat on a level.
Yeah, one-to-one level.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's not like the rock star lifestyle where you see guys who maybe get like big breaks in movies or anything like that. If you go and work for a big company, it is a big deal, but at the same time, you don't really change as a person. You just see it as another opportunity and another job, but you're still the same person you were when you worked at like your first job. So which is interesting, of course, because yes, you have worked at, you know, one of my favorite studios, which is Blizzard, and also worked at one of my favorite game franchises, which is Overwatch. But then, of course, you're from the UK. You probably came from a very humble beginning of small studios at the time, and then worked your way up. So I think when we were kind of pre-talking there before we kind of rolled the official recording button, you were saying you didn't traditionally go through the school systems for art?
No. So so like I was saying, I loved video games and movies and animation, all those sorts of things, like everybody back in my childhood. But just like we're talking back in the sort of mid-90s when I was a teenager, like it just the thought that you could do that stuff professionally, I just didn't know where to go or how to go about learning, what that sort of progression would be. So I kind of gave up on art around sort of the age of 14 or something like that. Like I'd always drawn comics and made little plasticine characters and stuff. But then I ended up concentrating on languages. And I went to a university and studied Japanese language and culture.
Oh, wow.
Did that for 4 years and had a year living in Kyoto in Japan, which was a really awesome experience.
Oh, cool.
But then, just in my final year, for whatever reason, I got hold of a pirated copy of 3ds Max, like version 3, I think it was, and like Photoshop number 6 or something. And just as soon as I think I was supposed to be doing my dissertation, and I was kind of procrastinating on that, and instead I just started doing the like basic tutorials in Max, like I don't know, you had to like model a crash helmet and put like materials on it and stuff, or like make a ping pong ball bounce, that sort of thing. But immediately I just fell in love with it, and I was like, oh wow, why wasn't I doing this 5 years ago, sort of thing. So I graduated, and then I moved back in with my parents, and they weren't well, they were always very supportive, actually, but they were probably thinking, what the hell's he doing? We've just, supported him financially to do this degree, and now
Yeah.
he wants to do something completely different. So I basically just, worked like minimum wage during the week, just worked a like office job, and then all the rest of the time I was just teaching myself how to model stuff and trying to put together a portfolio. And then like a year or so after that, I moved to Nottingham with my wife, well, girlfriend at the time, because she was studying to be a teacher. And it just happened to be a company, Free Radical, who made Time Splitters, amongst other things. They were
Back in
looking
the
for
day.
They were looking for a junior texture artist, junior character artist, and by that point, I'd got maybe like half a dozen models, and they weren't anything to write home about. But I think there was enough within the texture painting. Maybe I'd kind of hand painted a bunch of textures, and they were not terrible. So
Right.
I managed to get a job, and basically just learned on the job from there, really. Most people in the studio had either been doing it for quite a while, or they'd come from some kind of art school background. So I immediately was just like, just felt under immense pressure to get better very quickly, and to particularly try and get better in terms of my fundamentals, and just better at drawing, and well, just understanding any kind of concept within art. I'd learnt how to use the applications, but not with any real understanding of perspective, or value ranges, or color theory, or proportion, or anatomy, or anything really. I just kind of learned what button did what within Max and Photoshop. So
Nice.
so after that, I mean, kind of my whole career since then really has always been a case of just trying to, I don't know, feeling like I'm trying to catch up with one thing or another, or just push to improve in different areas, just to I don't know, keep it interesting, I guess.
Yeah, because that's interesting, because I mean, you're probably more now known for your contribution to concept art than, I
Mm-hmm.
suppose, maybe 3D stuff. So,
Yeah.
but then again, this conversation we've had, even just a couple of weeks ago when I interviewed Max Davenport, he was saying about how 3D for him as well is also just a tool that helps his appreciation of the models and helps build faster blockouts for stuff he's doing. So it's probably something that you were kind of like ahead of the curve at the time, right? You were already mixing
Yeah,
2D and
I
3D
guess.
early on.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, because I was working as a character artist, for sort of 5 years or so, mainly while I was working at Free Radical. And I remember when I first saw the concepts by Hawk Prey for Gears of War, I think it was. Those were sort of some of the first 3D concept art that I'd ever seen, and it was kind of like, oh, of course, you can just do as much of it as you want in 3D. I think there was still at that time a bit of a stigma about oh, you shouldn't, if you're a concept artist, you should do it all in 2D. You shouldn't be using 3D software to help you, which is ridiculous. But there was definitely that kind of an attitude to it on certain forums back in the day. But as soon as I saw those concepts and just how amazing and how fully finished and cool they looked, I was like, well, I'm just going to do that. I'm going to start doing that. So I started doing a fair amount of 3D based concepts, and then I just gradually tried to introduce more and more 2D into my workflow as I went.
Yeah.
I was going to say, when I was nearing the end at Free Radical, I mean, Free Radical unfortunately went bust around the end of 2008. I think they were kind of bought, and they kept on going a bit longer. They became part of Crytek, and they worked on Crisis 3 and things like that. But the studio effectively kind of died at the end of 2008, and even at that point, I'd started to talk to a guy, a recruiter I knew at Blizzard. So I was sort of starting to try and move in that direction.
To even look for the next
Yeah.
thing. Was that a difficult conversation at the time with your partner? I mean, not to get too personal, but of course, moving to California is a big thing. So was that a decision you kind of both made together, that you were going to be okay to move over to the
Yeah,
States?
yeah. My wife, she's a
I
teacher.
only really ask this because I'm probably in a similar situation
Oh,
where, yeah, like, I mean, I'm coming looking for my first gig, and if that first
yeah,
gig is like away from Scotland, then I'm going to
of
have to think
course.
about taking my partner with me. So yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we did. We'd obviously discuss it, and it's not a decision that we took lightly. But no, I mean, she's a teacher, and at the time she'd been at the same school for a number of years, and I think we were both ready for a change. I think we'd just been, we'd been in Nottingham for 5 or 6 years, and we were just ready for a different experience. And the plan initially was just to, you know, an opportunity like that to go and work somewhere like Blizzard doesn't come along every day. So we
of
just thought
course.
we'll go for it, and we'll give it a year initially. And if we like it, great, we'll stay
Mhm.
and stay as long as it's what we want to be doing. And if not, then no big deal. We gave it a go.
Right.
But yeah, ultimately we ended up staying for 7 years, and both our kids were born out there, and it was a awesome experience. Just I'm super glad that I did it, and I think that obviously having had that opportunity, it's
Mm.
definitely paved the way for things that I've done since as well.
Since yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we've kind of spoke about this on and off since we kind of met, and excuse me, we've talked about the opportunities that have came up recently, and things that you're doing where you're still kind of trying to find your way. What do you think is your next step moving forward? Do you think it's back into a studio, or are you kind of enjoying the freedom you have at the moment? Probably, especially now with your kids being that kind of age as well, helping with school and stuff. Is that kind of taking a part in your decision and where you want to go as well?
Yeah. So I mean, I was at Blizzard for like 7 years, and then we moved back to the UK in 2016, and I worked remotely for Riot for sort of 3 years. So and now I'm just I've spent 6 months working for a mobile studio, and I'm just sort of considering what I'm going to do or where I'm going to focus next.
Yeah,
But yeah, in terms of my decision making, I mean, I do miss being in a studio environment. I'm not going to lie, but at the same
yeah,
time, I think like those big projects, those big AAA things that take 5 years to ship, or
yeah.
sometimes even more. Like, there's only so much of that I could do sort of back to back before I started to go a bit insane. So. Um,
Yeah, I can totally find that where even when again people I wonder if people ever get sick of me saying this one. When I used to work at Axis. No, when I done my internship at Axis in Glasgow, when I spoke to people there was a couple of guys I knew had come from games and stuff, and they were saying
yeah,
the good thing about the cinematics was you only worked maybe on a project for 6 to 7 months, then you turned out something that was like tangible in your hand, you could see it.
yeah.
The credits rolled, and you got to work on that one thing, and then that then moves you on to the next project. So I think that's why some of those more short-term contract gigs are more appealing to people now, because you're not stuck into something for 5 years of your life, which can
Yeah,
also be a long
I
time.
think, yeah, that's very true. And I think as you get older as well, it becomes more of an issue. Like a lot of people who I've come up through the industry with, we're all of a similar age, and we're all of a
Mm,
similar opinion. It seems like we don't necessarily want to keep doing those super long projects every time.
yeah.
For the reasons that you say, it's just
Mm,
I think you just crave variety,
yeah.
and particularly these AAA games, the bigger the budget, the bigger the team, like the more
Mm,
specialized generally you have to get. So like,
yeah.
you could be the guy that's just doing trash cans for a year or something. You know what I mean? Like, it's totally feasible.
Yeah.
That could be your
I think if I was getting to do trash cans on Overwatch, I'd be pretty happy. So
trash cans go. They are some of the more entertaining ones to design. That
yeah,
reminds
of
me of it
course.
actually when I first joined that team back when it was Tyson.
Hmm.
I kind of gone in as a character artist, but with the understanding that I was going to be a bit of like a hybrid 2D 3D guy. So I was going to do some concepting
Right,
and make character models as well. And one of
right.
the first sort of assignments I got as a concept artist was to design a dumpster. I remember just being like, yes, living the dream.
Yes.
Designing the sci-fi dumpster.
Yeah,
But I remember, like, I said that sarcastically to Peter Lee, and he was like, you can find a way to make anything interesting,
yeah.
at least for a while. Like, if you can just find a unique angle on it, like find a way of making it interesting for yourself, then
Yeah.
that's normally going to come through in the design that you create as well. So I took that on board, and I generally try and approach design work with that same idea of like, okay, this might not be necessarily the most exciting thing I'm never going to design, but if I can if I can make it interesting for myself for at least, as long as it takes me to do it, whether it's half a day or a day or something, then I'll have learned something in the process probably. So I try and keep that.
Yeah.
But then
I was gonna yeah. I was going to say though, because it reminds me of when we were doing some early graphic design stuff when I done graphic design as a diploma before I moved into
yeah
3D in university. But a couple of the guys who were teaching us at the time were people who came from industry, and they were saying, look, even when you get handed a brief, it'll be for something really not fun, but your job is to make it fun. Like, it's, the client will come in with something really super dry and say, we need this pitch for this thing, for this eco bin or whatever it is they're going to pitch
yeah
for. And your job is to make that thing flashy and make it appealing to people who want to invest money or want to get behind it. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges of being a designer, is that you're having to take something as mundane as a dumpster, right, and then make it interesting. So even when players walk past it in the game, they're like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." I mean, maybe the dumpster will be pretty cool, but even then, the smaller things like, in Eichenfeld, like, there's tons of little, details hanging about with the flags and banners and destroyed little buildings that, probably more for me because, I'm in that world. So
yeah
you take more time to look at those things, whereas a lot of people will just graze past them. There's nothing worse than, when people invest in AAA games and they're sitting playing them and they're just running past everything at a million miles a second, and you're looking at all these blades of grass and all these assets, and you're like, look at all this stuff that you're just missing.
I do, yeah, I do feel that as well. Like it seems like such a waste of, oftentimes hundreds of millions of dollars, and also, many thousands of hours of people's time. And I think, yeah, it is a shame. And also, but I can totally understand the reason why people just breezed by those things. Because I mean,
Yeah.
with one, like, what's cutting edge one week is kind of like passe, a few months later. So there's that. And also like the way that UI, like HUD UI works in a lot of games, like there's so many markers and overlays on top of the actual visuals of the game. And UI is a definitely, a sort of necessary element within the game. But a lot of the time I feel like there's just so much of it that like you don't really notice the actual game world a lot of the time. You're just focused on like some HUD marker that you're aiming towards, and there's like,
oh my god, it's the Grand Theft Auto thing, right? Like
yeah,
you're driving for missions and you're doing all these amazing things in this big California reenactment, but then everyone just stares at the minimap.
yeah. So I can understand. Like when I play games, as much as I can, I try and turn all of the HUD UI off, and like as long as it's not completely detrimental to the experience, as long as I can still get from point A to point B. Particularly if it's open world games, I like to try and like just completely remove that stuff and appreciate the artistry that's gone into something.
Of course, I think it was even
crazy now.
Yeah, when I got the Switch initially and I got Breath of the Wild, I tried to avoid as much spoilage as I could. But one of my friends who just got it before me was like, "The best advice I will give you is go into the options menu and turn the HUD and the minimap off, and just like dive into that world head first, and don't." Didn't go straight for the markers. Try and find your own way through the world, and it was more of an adventure I think I'd ever had in any game like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's why there's so much appeal for things like Minecraft and No Man's Sky and these procedurally generated worlds as well, because like there's a sense of discovery that you just don't get. I mean, and I love the crafted experiences of a Red Dead Redemption 2 or a Horizon Zero Dawn or whatever. Like I think they're amazing achievements artistically, but at the same time, there's definitely something to be said for just that kind of experience that feels singular and fully immersive. And I think like you have to strip away as much of that stuff as possible, I think, to really have that kind of sort of singular gaming memory,
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you brought up. I mean, I'm just downloading Red Dead as we speak because
the PC version.
I wasn't much of a console gamer for a long time because I've had a computer. So waiting for the PC version, which dropped a couple of days ago. So I've just invested in that. But what I did enjoy about Red Dead when I was playing it on the console with one of my friends was just the technical marvel of reproducing that whole world in as much detail as it did. But on the flip side, I feel like Breath of the Wild's environment was more realized and had more mystery and adventure behind it.
Yeah.
Because even now, I think when I still play that just for fun, I mean, I think it was only like a month ago. I managed to go, because you can do the hero's journey where you see everywhere you've walked in the map.
Yeah.
So I was trying to go to places I hadn't been yet, and I managed to discover this tiny little village down in the kind of bottom right of the map where there was a recreation of like Outset Island on the Wind Waker game. They'd kind of
Cool.
recreated it like a little village to pay homage.
Yeah.
I just wandered into it with my horse and I was like, where I've played this game for like 300 hours. I've never seen this village. Or even the fun fact that like I don't really want, like in Red Dead especially, I was fast traveling as well, but with Zelda, I just loved going from one place to the next, because even stuff like, getting attacked on the road by ninjas as you were walking down it, or bumping into people selling stuff, or like that kind of stuff is, it's just irreplaceable. Even I mind I was listening to a gaming podcast recently where they talked about the old E3 demo years back, where you had like 15 minutes in the Great Plateau and you just got to do anything you want. But if 20 people played that demo, everybody had a different experience.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So yeah, different ways. But then I take it with when you were kind of building on Titan, that was a big concern for you guys, right? Because obviously, for people who don't know, Titan was the original name for Overwatch. It was going to be an MMORPG, open world thing. So how, I mean, I don't know how much you can talk to, obviously, because a lot of that, even in the documentary, they were very scarce with details. But what was you kind of thinking towards the point of that project where you were going to switch to Overwatch? Was it just that it didn't feel realized enough, or you didn't feel like there was enough there to push out a game?
Yeah, I mean it's I mean that the history of that game is or Titan's development is it
Legendary.
was a strange one. It was a long and strange experience. I mean, as much as there is a lot of shared DNA between the two games, and particularly, I guess, visually and in terms of like a lot of the heroes, obviously they were part of Titan to some degree as playable characters, but yeah, the sort of scope of Titan was just so much bigger and broader and encompassed a ton of different kinds of gameplay. I mean, look at WoW now, and in terms of like all the different facets of that game, like it was going to be a similar thing, but in a sort of sci-fi near future setting, there was going to be like so much content, and the game world was, planned to be absolutely huge. So it was like it was a massive, it was a massive undertaking, and like it was a team of like 200 people at its peak. But yeah, I mean, I think it was just a case of, I don't know. I don't want to speak for people who were in charge of the project, but I think Jeff Kaplan has said that that they didn't necessarily have a full handle on what the game was supposed to be. I think that happened for a number of reasons. But
I think Jeff and Chris have both kind of spoke to it, right? That they just felt they came to a point where they were like, yeah, this isn't going to work. This isn't really what we thought it was going to be. What do we do next? What's the next step? Because obviously, I think for a lot of game companies, it's hard to work on something that long and then nothing comes out because it either gets cancelled or shelved.
Yeah.
So and then of course Overwatch was the next step.
Yeah,
and then,
Overwatch. The thing that actually always worked, even I joined the project Titan in 2009, end of 2009, and even at that stage, like the PvP, team based gameplay, FPS gameplay was always fun. Like even at those early stages, like playtests were a blast. Even in the early stages of development. So that was the part that always worked. Like everything else, it sort of fluctuated in terms of how well it was working, all the other facets of the gameplay and the world and all those sorts of things. Like we never really got a full handle on that, but the kind of just, the PvP stuff was always a hell of a lot of fun. So I think they just doubled down on that, which was obviously a really smart decision. Just focused on making that as good as it can be, and really, distilling the kind of IP, the world building, and the art style that we'd started with Titan, and just kind of making the most Blizzard version of that thing, and really just concentrating on the heroes and fleshing out their backstories and all that sort of thing.
Because I mean, at the time, obviously, your company across the road, or the guys who were close by, Riot, were obviously making big strides with with League of Legends, and their kind of hero stuff was something that was also attractive. So it was probably a good idea that they thought, well, this is a good thing to kind of hang on to, was the focus of the heroes. And it's weird now you say that, because I think even people trying to think of Overwatch in any other way would be weird, right? Because
Mhm.
now we know it as this FPS PvP game,
Yeah,
but then to think if Titan actually had came out, and how different that story would have been,
yeah, yeah,
would be really interesting. Because even then, like when Overwatch released in its infancy, Blizzard had never attempted a first-person shooter, but then of course
yeah.
here it came, and the success was huge, especially the first year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I remember, because after Titan got rebooted as Overwatch, I actually didn't stay on Team Four. I went on to another R&D project for a couple of years, and I
Okay.
remember like when they were talking about Overwatch, when I'd go and like visit people working on it, um, you know. A lot of people outside of the team were questioning, like, can you make this FPS with like all these different characters, all these different heroes with different abilities? Like, how are we going to balance that? Like it
Yeah.
seemed like a risk, to be honest.
Yeah.
But obviously, they did a great job of managing to keep everybody, balanced and make the gameplay fun and for the most part pretty fair between the different heroes. But yeah, it was definitely something that they agonized about for a long time, I think, and they worked super hard. I know that team, the kind of core team that stayed after, because like 75% of that team moved on to other projects. Whether it was going on to StarCraft or Diablo or Heroes of the Storm
Yeah.
or WoW,
Yeah.
most of the team left. So it was
Yeah.
really just like a skeleton crew that had to prove that Overwatch could work.
Yeah, because even I think we talked about kind of Mark's journey at the time, but then when we interviewed him, he talked about how as soon as Titan kind of was starting to make that transition into Overwatch, he moved on to the StarCraft team,
Mm-hmm.
and started doing different stuff there before he obviously eventually left and went into work in QBrush.
Yeah.
So was there a thing that kind of made a decision for a lot of people that they wanted to move? Was it just a kind of collective decision? A lot of people said, there's options for people to stay or people can go. How did you kind of make the decision you wanted to come off that and not
Well, I mean,
continue in Overwatch?
it wasn't my decision. Like,
Right, okay.
no, like most of us
Yeah.
would have. I think, I don't know. I don't want to speak for other people, but I think a lot of people
No, of
would
course.
have stayed on Overwatch given the opportunity. But
Yeah.
we just had a meeting one day and we're basically told, unfortunately, this project isn't working out as we would hope. But I mean,
Right.
the good thing about it being a company of the size of Blizzard was that they could actually absorb a lot of that they didn't have to like let a bunch of people go. They had
Right.
opportunities for other avenues, people to go and work on different teams.
Right.
So even though it was a tough day, a tough week or whatever,
Yeah.
it did, soften the blow that there was other things to get involved with out
You could go and work on something else.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that, yeah.
And I think like the company as a whole benefited. I can't speak to other disciplines, but definitely in terms of art, I think that because on Team 4 on Titan we were looking to do a lot with PBR and all these sorts of things, like
Yeah.
kind of next gen workflows generally. The other teams that had maybe were more established but had maybe got sort of stuck in doing things a particular way, like they really benefited from having people come across and bring these different techniques, and I think a lot
Yeah.
of the art across the other projects leveled up as a result of that.
Oh, interesting.
So
So was the R&D project you worked on, was that something that has been announced or just never kind of...
no, it's something that's never been talked about, to be honest. Like,
Okay.
small,
we'll say no more.
yeah, super small team. There was only ever it was like 3 people to start with, and it only ever got as big as I think about 8 or 10.
Right.
And it was an amazing experience. Like it's not something I can ever talk about. It's not something I can
Yeah.
show any work from. And I
Of course.
poured like 2 years of my life into it, and
Yeah.
it was my first opportunity to like define the visuals for a project as well, because I was like, by virtue of the fact that I was the only artist on the project for a lot of those 2 years, I
Right.
sort of became the de facto art director for it. So
Oh, it's cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
I got to not only did I get to define a lot of the visual style, but also because it was such a small team, I was like in the room with everybody. So it was myself and the game director and lead programmer and just a few of us really. And so I got to actually pitch ideas for design, and I got to do level design and all this sort of stuff, like, which
Oh, cool.
I'd always wanted to. But when you're on a team of 200, you're gonna obviously not necessarily have opportunities to do much outside of your immediate discipline. So
I could imagine, yeah, that'd be
so
kind of
that
tough.
was really, like, even though that project didn't work out and it got shelved and everything, like, it was sort of a turning point for me in terms of, I decided at that point, one, that I really wanted to try and get into game development more generally in terms of my own
Hmm.
projects, but also, just that it kind of proved to me that I'd rather be on smaller teams given the opportunity. Like,
Right.
I mean, big teams can make amazing games, but your opportunity to have, like, real creative impact is lessened. Unless you're, like, right at the top of the tree, it's kind of, harder and harder to kind of really put your stamp on something. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That makes a lot of sense, yeah. I think that's why you see a lot of the guys who were, like big time directors and worked in these AAA games have now all moved on to like their own project or formed their own studio or done something where they feel they can be creative. Ken Levine famously was, working on Bioshock for long enough, and then he was just like, screw this. After, Bioshock Infinite, he was like, I just want to focus on something where I feel like I can have a real input because these big AAA things are just, getting too much.
yeah.
But then I feel like it's also a great learning experience, like you said, where Blizzard probably taught you so much as an
Oh
artist, as a person.
yeah.
How did you feel world building was different at Blizzard as opposed to previous companies you'd worked at, which was probably only the one at the time, but did
Yeah,
you feel like there was something different about it?
I think just that it was an actual thing. I think nowadays, like, I don't know, now that there's more of a vernacular for concept art and just, like, IP in general, like, world building is no big deal. But I think, like, yeah, when I'd worked at Free Radical, we might have talked about a bit of backstory and, done some concept art, but the idea of, like, real world building and lore and all that sort of thing was still a relatively alien concept to me, I think. So the fact that it was that Blizzard placed so much importance on it, I think that was sort of eye opening for me. And I just remember being in meetings with, the rest of the concept art team, and there'd be like Chris Metzen and these other guys, and they were just
Yeah.
so passionate about what they were talking about. I think that was the thing that really came over to me. It was like
Yeah.
so much enthusiasm for the things that we were making, and also just a real humility. And really did feel, for the most part, like, best idea in the room was the one that we went with, and it didn't matter who it came from. So I think,
Mm.
that kind of atmosphere definitely, with regard to Metzen, was something I was always really aware of. And just with, I don't know, in terms of world building, I just think, like, that people really cared about it and they put a lot of thought into it. And I guess they'd seen, from the games that they'd already made, like, how much your own passion for something can translate to like a massive fan base, and how much they will sort of take it on and elevate it from what you start with. It must be very rewarding to witness that, and then to want to do it within other IP, within other worlds. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's something that I try and bear in mind for the work I do on my own projects. Is just like, I think you've always got to put so much in. You've got to put so much thought in of your own, and the audience that's actually consuming it, like, they might only get a fraction of what you actually envisage in your head. But I think you can always tell when somebody cared about what they were making. So whether that's the visual designs of things, or just like the backstory, or just a sort of internal logic as to why you're doing the things you're doing. Like, I think if you cared about it, then it's going to get communicated.
Yeah. I think it's why a lot of the smaller indie devs, when they release a lot of these games that they've poured their absolute heart and soul into for however many years, you feel that love more one-to-one than with a big company who's maybe just, I'm not wanting to badmouth any people who work in Call of Duty, because I know some of the guys and they're good guys, but I feel like, at this point, they're just kind of going through the motions sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, everybody wants to have their input creatively and how the worlds will be viewed. But then, like a small indie game like Bastion years ago that came out, with
Yeah.
Supergiant, stuff like that, it feels so handcrafted and so curated that it really is very appreciated on our side of the line, because people see that love. And I think even recently with Kojima and Death Stranding, people have had such a polarizing response to that game. I know, which is crazy. But then, when you look at those beautiful recreated landscapes of Iceland, and you see the love of, making the likes and the positive comments and people reaching out and connecting, it's like, it gets to a point where a game's not really a game anymore. It's an artistic piece, and
Yeah.
I feel like Kojima is probably one of the best developers for realizing that. Even you could see remnants of stuff in Phantom Pain he was trying to bring across.
Yeah.
And then I think, that stuff is definitely picked up by people who then appreciate games and have played them long enough, and then look into something like Death Stranding and see how much time he really has put into that, because all the small minutiae details are things that are really handcrafted and curated, like smaller games on Bastion, but in a AAA space. So yeah, I think it's, like you said, with Blizzard, I think they're probably another one of those developers that takes the time to make those little small bits of the games feel just very personal to the player.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Overwatch is probably, resonated with so many people, because I think so many people have resonated with those characters, right? Because there's so much love being put in every one of those that somebody can almost connect with each individual or one or two of those characters on a personal level.
Sure. Yeah. I totally agree. I think, you can't fake passion for something. I think, and I think it's amazing when big projects like a Death Stranding or Overwatch or whatever, it's amazing that they come out at all when there's such like massive labors of, of love and of hardship, but also that passion, that it still sings through, that it feels like everyone was pulling in the same direction, because that's not always the case, right? I think the bigger the team gets, the more potential there is for a good number of the people on that team not necessarily being 100% on board with whatever it is that they're making. So I think if you can get to the end of a project, everyone's like proud of what they did and still eager to do more, then I think you're in a good place.
I think people are also surprised that Kojima managed to put out Death Stranding, and I think it was about 3 years.
Yeah.
But then when you look at the game, there wasn't a whole world he really had to build, in a sense that he had to populate that. I mean, most of that game is just terrain where you walk from one point to another. So, it's not like you guys where you're having to build every single wee dumpster and NPC and robot. It's, he just, kind of brought that photogrammetry of Iceland back in, and then, had 2 or 3 main characters, a couple of buildings. Obviously, a lot of work went into that game, yeah. Not shitting on Kojima's on his effort, but yeah, I mean, I think
you got to pick your battles, and I think you look at like some behemoth Ubisoft game, and it's like it's an insane amount of work, an incredible amount of work, and like the Herculean effort of having to corral something like that, like the producers, like the spreadsheets for those games must be just incredible. They must be an absolute work of art, but. But I think there is a danger, like when those projects get so big that it's spread across a dozen studios, then I think it's harder to have something at the end of it that is more than than sort of just generic. I think that's where you kind of suffer sometimes. Like, and I don't want to badmouth those games, because I've put I put a ton of hours into various Assassin's Creeds and Watch Dogs and things like that. So like I've got more than my fair share of enjoyment out of them. But I think there is a difference. Like, you feel a difference between one of those games and something that genuinely feels like a labor of love.
Yeah, I definitely felt that when I went back to Division 2 after investing in it, and the sheer detail of that whole world.
It's incredible. It is.
Yeah, there's so much. On every second step you take, there's a wrapper or something moving about, or a car tipped over with stuff in the back, and just we know, right, the time that takes to just make those individual little things. Yes, that is a labor of love. Where I think when you were talking about even Assassin's Creed, and eventually when Jade Raymond left to head up another studio, they probably felt the same, where Assassin's Creed was starting to go through the motions, and there wasn't as much love or detail being taken into those games. So that's why people started to leave, and that kind of franchise almost had a renaissance, in a sense, where I think recently Odyssey has been its saving grace, but even up until maybe I think was it Rogue, or the one that took place in Paris?
Unity.
Yeah. that was when people were starting to notice, like there was all those memes online of the glitches and stuff, and people with no faces and just eyeballs and stuff. And
But yeah, like eyeballs on a wig.
yeah. But then, of course, when that stuff starts to slip through the cracks, it's like, oh, what's happening? Where's the quality assurance coming from?
I mean, I guess, but it's like it's the schedule of those things as well. You got to put one of those out every 2 years or something.
2 years, again, that's when it starts to, unlike guys like Rockstar who, are local to us, but, they take absolute time with those games and are always a marvel, That's their money-making machine now, is especially GTA, because I think it's still in the top 10 games every month for the last 5 years. So
I mean, it's great if you're in a position where you can just say it's ready when it's ready, and people are going to wait, because that when you put something out, it's going to be a level above pretty much anything else that's out there. Like, I think it's a very strong position to be in. Yeah.
Rockstar are in a unique position as well, I think, where their developers trust them that they're going to be able to produce something quite incredible once it's finished. So they're not keen to rush them. They're like, we know you guys will make something amazing, so it's not an issue. But then it's probably took them a long time to get to that point, right? Even from 3 and stuff, and the guys working on it in the early 90s. But yeah, so I mean, going back to the the artistic side of it, when you were working on Titan, you said you were kind of maybe not a jack of all trades, but you had kind of multiple disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
What did your days kind of look like going into the office? What were your kind of main focuses? Probably early in the project, because that might be your business.
Like the first year and a half, I was on the character team. So when we first started, I'm trying to think who was on there. I mean, that team was incredible, to be honest. Like the whole art team, there was just so many amazing people. But within the character crew, like Pure and Renault and Vitali and Mark Brunner.
Oh yeah,
like it was just
Vitali. Jesus Christ, even just Vitali on his own. Like
Vadim was there. It was like it was insane. But yeah, it was a lot of it early on was it was sort of still. We were searching for the style, and there was a lot of R&D going on in terms of like what the whole pipeline was going to be. We were, because it was going to be an MMO, there was a lot of assets that were going to get swapped between different characters. So there was a lot of just setting up the systems for being able to like transfer things between one character and another. So, and a lot of that stuff started to feel quite dry to me, to be honest. Like, even though at that point, like Arnold Sang had joined, so we were just getting these incredible concepts like every week. He had like a new lineup of like, here's another like faction for the world, and it was like they were all just incredible. I mean, they're still like, as far as I can tell, they're still drawing on a lot of that stuff for Overwatch. Like the amount of crazy art that he did over those 4 years on Titan, it was pretty insane. Like it was pretty humbling, to be around any of those dudes really, but particularly him. It was ridiculous.
I mean the talent pool at Blizzard is just crazy. Like even you're not even talking about like okay, there's Overwatch, but then there's also Diablo across the way. There's StarCraft. The guys who work on that campus are just ridiculous. It's just a dream team, I think, is the apt. But then it's just it's not really realized until you get there and meet those people and know. Oh wow, any one of these guys could be running his own studio. Any one of these guys could be a lead at another studio.
Yeah,
so
true. Yeah.
And yeah.
So day to day, I mean, I was just on the character team doing character models and bits of concept here and there. But I don't know, just something about having been a character artist for sort of 5 or 6 years at that point. It was like I just kind of got in a rut a bit with it.
Right.
Even though I was working on really fun stuff, the process of like do the high poly now, do your low poly, do a bake, do the texturing. Like I just felt like I was particularly doing it for an MMO where it was like you're doing lots of like assets in the same kind of manner over and over again. It just felt like I needed to do something else. So I made the decision to move over to the environment team.
Yeah.
And credit to Justin Tabarat, who was the art director at the time. Like he was sort of very supportive and allowed me to move over and that sort of thing. So it was all handled like really nicely. So I moved over to environments and ended up doing a lot of prop design and prop modeling for a long time, and then gradually started to do bits and pieces of sort of architecture design and a few like concept paintings here and there for different POIs and that sort of thing within the world.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's probably one of the rare things that I've found is that there's these collections of little, or groups or findings of people where you can kind of do a lot of things pretty good. I mean, I'm saying this pretty good, obviously exceptional because you're working at Blizzard, but yeah, I mean, guys who can, like not only model stuff but also can concept, and that's an interesting crossover. It's something that I think personally for me has been a real challenge because I feel every time. The problem I've had this is me agony aunt thing here, guys. I'll try not to be too long, but yeah, the last couple of years I've definitely found where I've struggled to find my focus, and my focus has mostly been tarred because I'm kind of jumping between 2D and 3D characters, environments,
Yeah.
and especially now, I mean, I did do 3D for a while where I was getting to a point I could model things pretty well, but then still wasn't kind of making them game ready. That was still a process I was learning, but also enjoy painting and drawing, and wanting to, focus on one thing, obviously, because I think that's the quickest way to get leverage in this industry is if you kind of specialize initially in one thing. But how did you feel, kind of flexing both those muscles and having, your kind of pick of things to do, or being able to do multiple things? Was that quite common in Blizzard, especially where people kind of multi-talented in those different disciplines? Or
Yeah, there was quite like on the character team. There was a lot of those guys were really good 2D artists as well. Obviously, Mark is a really good concept artist.
yeah,
Pure Oberson has like an amazing style. Is a super good 2D artist as well. Um, I don't know, on the art team, like there's a lot of very talented and very like kind of flexible people overall,
yeah,
as I remember. From my own perspective, I found that, I mean, like I'd wanted to get better at 2D for a very long time, and like
yeah,
from about from pretty much the moment that I got into Free Radical, I managed to get a job. Like I just spent any free time I had at home just trying to get better as a 2D artist. So it was definitely like probably like a 6 or 7 year process to get to the point where Blizzard would let me do, concept stuff as well,
right,
do
okay,
models.
yeah,
So it was definitely a gradual, painful
yeah,
process.
yeah,
But I found that having spent all that time making assets, it meant that, when it came to making concept art that was actually functional and usable for the environment team or whoever else, like I found that I kind of had a pretty good understanding of like what the pain points were going to be, or like what it was going to be important to work out, because like so much of concept art and game design in general, I guess, but like a lot of the time with concept art, like it's just problem solving, right? It's like you're not necessarily
yeah,
doing like super pretty paintings or anything, or like really
yeah,
getting the chance to polish any individual piece of art. Like a lot of the time it's just some really rough sketch that shows an environment artist how two parts of a building or something are going to connect, or like
yeah,
the backside of something, like just really really quickly and roughly sketching all that kind of stuff out. So
yeah,
I found that coming from a sort of a production artist background, that
hmm,
I had a pretty good idea of like what was going to be useful,
yeah,
outside of just like coming up with interesting ideas. Like I definitely found that, yeah, being able to sort of see it from both sides, I guess, was something that was like really beneficial for me when I started to do more concept art.
yeah,
And I wanted to mention as well, like when I was another really good thing about being in that area in Southern California was that there's a lot of these really good schools. Like obviously you have the big ones like Art Center and things like that, but then
yeah,
smaller ones where you can do these like weekend courses, or like 10 week courses where you do like 10 evenings,
brainstorm and stuff like that.
Yeah, Brainstorm and Concept Design Academy. Like I owe so much to being able to go to those schools and like
Yeah,
learn from people like Nathan Fowkes or Shane Prigmore or Chris
oh,
Alvarez,
yeah,
like all these dudes. Like who, I mean, I'm a massive fan of animation, of feature animation and like all the visual development work. Like I think it's some of the absolute best stuff. A lot of the time,
hmm,
like I prefer it to game stuff, to be honest. Like I think it's so well designed and just like they just have it down to an absolute science, I think. And
yeah,
doing as much as possible with as few elements as possible, I think they just absolutely nail it so much of the time.
yeah,
But yeah, I don't know, like the certain things that I learnt going to courses at those schools, on a Saturday or a Sunday or whatever, that like I know like kind of made all the difference for me. So I'm just yeah, super grateful that I was able to sort of eat up a lot of that a lot of that
Yeah,
while I was there.
yeah. I mean, that's interesting as well because we've had James Murphy on not too long ago.
Yeah,
Yeah, and James is like, I saw just tonight him and Anthony Jones and Steve Zapata are going to be running some classes on the East Coast soon. And even those three guys between them, but then James had said, like I said, when he started at Brainstorm, it was just a great way of getting that information and teaching to people on a kind of short term basis.
yeah,
But it's definitely one of those things where this whole kind of slew of modern learning can be very adaptable to however you want to learn. And there's great that there's an alternative now because Art Centre's great and Nomon, places like that.
yeah,
Alex, has built something amazing there. But then, of course, the reality is those things cost a lot of money, and if you don't have that kind of capital, you want to be able to have an option of somewhere where you can learn from professionals. And I think James and John have done a real thing
of course.
with Brainstorm
Yeah,
that has stood the test of time over the last couple of years. And
absolutely.
James is one of the guys who's benefited from that. Upon teaching there as well, he also got to learn stuff because he got to sit in other classes. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's an amazing thing. But then, of course, you need to be out that side of the world, of course, to take advantage of them. But I know what you're saying, like that whole district of studios that were in South California and the schools that are there. If you get a job in one of those studios, then yeah, the learning possibilities kind of skyrocket from there.
I think that's it because you're like, at the job, you're just like surrounded by super talented people who, you can just learn from stuff every day. And then, having the opportunity outside of that to then learn from sort of adjacent industries, whether it's like film, concept work or
Yeah,
effects or animation or whatever, like,
yeah,
it was definitely, super, super worthwhile being able to take advantage of all that stuff.
money well spent. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And then again, at the fraction of a price compared to what you'd be paying
Yeah.
at one of the bigger schools.
And
So
I think, as I recall it, Blizzard reimbursed us for a certain amount of that stuff as well. So it was,
oh yeah, I remember I managed to get across when I was in LA for Lightbox. Luckily, David Long, shout out, managed to get me a tour,
nice.
and I got to catch up with a couple of guys that I'd spoke to online for a while. Jeremy Cranford from the Hearthstone team and
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know.
Philip Zhang from the WoW team as well.
Cool.
So they were all kind of like, yeah, if you're coming out, give us a shout out, and then we all kind of sat and had lunch together. So yeah, it was a really awesome time just to see the studio. But then, yeah, David was talking about how Blizzard have a kind of purse or a pocket that they can give to artists of the year to basically invest in themselves. So that's really amazing when you get the opportunity to not only work at such an amazing studio, but they then want to invest back in you as an artist. So
I think it makes sense though. If you can afford to invest in your staff, then you should. Like if they're keen
yeah,
to keep learning, I think that the worst thing would be is if people get to a certain point in their career and they're just kind of happy at that level and like, well, I've kind of learned everything that I want to learn. And it does happen.
yeah,
Like most people I encounter are still like curious and enthusiastic and wanting to learn, but you definitely do encounter people who are just like, this is the way I do stuff and I'm not going to change now. So,
yeah.
so
Yeah,
as long as people are willing to make the effort, then I think it makes sense for companies to try,
invest.
help them to do it as much as possible. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, the guys I've always met who are involved in Blizzard at one point or another have always been the guys. Anyway, the side of the guys I've met has been the guys who've been invested in learning and growing and
Yeah.
making their stuff better. So, yeah, I think that's the reason that Blizzard comes out with such amazing stuff all the time. And then, of course, recently BlizzCon happened and Overwatch 2 got announced, Diablo 4. So, it's good that they're still churning out newer stuff as well, although it's kind of built in pre-existing franchises. But then I think they've kind of grooved into the Nintendo way of thinking where they kind of just breathe new life into those old IPs and make them more modern or more interesting. I think especially even the fact that Diablo 4 was based on like a Japanese horror aesthetic has really been interesting to see that and the whole Lilith design and the way they're going to push that game and the more realistic approach to it. So I think, yeah, that's going to be a really interesting time for Blizzard. Although it was funny, we were having a conversation, and again, no disrespect to the Overwatch team because those guys are incredible, but people were kind of thinking that Overwatch 2 looked more like a kind of add-on to the game as opposed to something brand new. But then I think the content is so fresh and so amazing anyway that sometimes people just want more of the same. So if the game was, already kind of solid, but they just wanted to add extras on top of that, it's probably a good way to go. Keeping the core mechanics and the core aesthetic and look, but just adding more content on top of that for people to ingest. So
I think there's going to be many hundreds of hours of gameplay in that game, so I wouldn't worry too much about whether it feels like a full sequel or not. But I can understand at the same time. I think maybe people ideally would hope to see like a big change between Overwatch 1 and Overwatch 2. I don't know whether it's in terms of the setting or something or other, obviously they've built this very sort of positive, optimistic future, and it'd be hard to take it in a very different direction, straight off the bat. But I can get where people are coming from, But
I think
it's popular for a reason. So if you can build on top of that, then I'm sure people like to have very reactionary opinions, but I'm sure a lot of those people will still be there playing it the day that it drops.
Oh yeah, of course, no, definitely. I think it's interesting as well where it was probably because you built, you spent so many years building on that IP that there probably is multiple games within that because, like you said, you were taking one aspect of it and expanding. So, like even people talk about, I wonder how they're doing with Heroes and if they're running out of ideas. But then, when Titan was probably a thing, you had, 30, 40 different variations of people. And then, of course, the good thing with Wizard is they'll take the time to really handcraft each individual hero or villain and make them very full and fleshed out so that when they come out, they feel like a very complete package. And the fact that once you buy that game, everything that then expands in that is free. So it's another thing where you're with some games you're buying champions or you're buying extra stuff that just it comes as part of your base package. So
you think about the amount of content that's come out in the 3 years since Overwatch came out. That's a lot for
one game,
$60 or whatever it was.
I think actually I paid about 25 or something. It was on sale, so I definitely can't complain about content. And then it's all those things as well. But I feel I can't complain about any game because the game, knowing people within the industry, it's hard to talk shit about games when you understand the level of commitment and time that goes into these things. When people always look at stuff and go, that looks crap, or it's like, oh god, a part of you dies inside. You're like, oh, you have no idea. So especially because I think I knew some guys on the Anthem team in EA. And of course that had such a kind of negative initial reaction and people kind of left it. It was like, oh no, it's really sucked. And then of course all the controversy with stuff like Battlefront with EA, because again I was like, oh, it's a Star Wars game, I was super happy for it to come out, and then it got this huge negative reception. I was like, no. So it's something I think you just have to make peace with if you work in games, that you're kind of at the mercy of the consumer, and it's hard to overcome that.
But I've been fortunate that I've not really worked. I've worked on a lot of things that never came out, but I've not really worked on anything that's like, I've never worked on anything that was like really hyped and then underwhelmed massively. But I can imagine that's can be pretty horrible. Like if you've put like years of your life into something and sacrificed a lot of weekends and worked long hours to do it and all that sort of stuff, and then the kind of the sum result of that is like is something that people are angry about for some reason. Like it's pretty harsh, to be honest.
You kind of face that in a term where you guys were brought in and told that Titan was basically not going to continue in its current form, and you would be moving on to something else. So in a sense, you have experienced that. You've had that whole, I've worked on this for 5 years, and then all of a sudden,
I think if it hadn't been for the fact that it became Overwatch, I think I'd feel a lot more bitter about it. But going back and working on that project for a year or something and shipping it, like it felt like having some closure on it. Whereas if it had been a project that just never came out at all, then it would be harder to reconcile, I think.
I think that's why Chris probably thought about tossing in the kind of, or not giving it up, of course, but moving on from Blizzard. I think that's why he felt it was the right time, because probably after spending so much time in Titan and then Overwatch finally shipped and it had such a positive reception, he was like, right, time to go out on a positive note. And
Yeah.
because I mean he'd been there since the 90s, so
Yeah.
it was a long journey for him. But then, of course, now you've left Blizzard and you've moved on, and you've kind of had the same probably experience where it's been a big part of your life, and now you've moved on to something where do you miss the kind of day-to-day stuff? Do you miss the people you worked with? I mean, you probably missed it all, right? But
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it was a super good crew on on Titan and on Overwatch. Like, I made a lot of really good friends, and I do miss that side of it. Like, as much as I enjoy aspects of working remotely and just being able to kind of choose my own schedule to a degree, like you can't kind of replicate, even if you're on Discord, even if you're on Slack and you're chatting with people all the time, like you can't replicate that experience of kind of being physically in a studio with people. So sure, there are aspects of that I miss, and I hope to get back to some kind of like team scenario at some point in the future. Like, I mean, I just had 4 months. I was in Brazil for 4 months working at this studio Wildlife, with a number of people who I'd worked with at Blizzard and at Riot. So it was kind of like a mini reunion of sorts. So that was cool, like being in a new city and like getting to be around a bunch of artists again for the first time in a few years was super cool.
Wow.
So
was that just you on your own, or were your family with you as well in Brazil?
I just went there. They came out. My family came out for like about a month while I was there. So I did I did like 4 months, and 3 months ish of that I was there sort of on my own. It was a slightly weird experience to, I mean, it was super worthwhile. Like, I learned a lot for sure. I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to visit and live somewhere for a bit that probably wouldn't have ended up going otherwise. So
of course,
it was super cool. But at the same time, it's tough, obviously. More so, I think, for my wife having to look after the 2 kids while I was in a high rise apartment somewhere. But
it's difficult, I think, in the initial stages, because your kids are so impressionable. When you've got to move or upheave and move to somewhere else, it's a lot to ask, I think, more of them than you, because
But I mean, in this situation, I knew it was only ever going to be a temporary thing, so it wasn't like we were like upping sticks and I was going to take them all to Brazil. It was more like it sort of changed to the routine of things. They're kind of used to me being at home, obviously, and like working from home and like being there when they come home in the afternoon, that sort of thing. So
it makes sense.
We managed it, and Skype and FaceTime and all those sorts of things, they help.
Of course.
So yeah.
So I mean, that's the thing now, where like you said, you've got the next step and you're trying to think. It's kind of interesting when you come away from something as big as Blizzard, right? Because you think, well, what's next? Because for a lot of people, that is almost a peak of a career where, people maybe work their whole lives to get to that studio, or, once they get there, don't want to leave because it's all they want to really ever know, because it's such a big part of their life. So was that a conscious thing when you left? You had a plan, or you just thought, I'll leave and then see where the kind of world takes me? Or
well, my wife and I, we'd kind of been chatting about whether we would move back to the UK and when would be a good time to do it. And like, for one reason or another, it ended up being around the time, like just around when Overwatch was shipping. And so like, we just made the decision, like, if we want our eldest, Alex, if we want him to go into the school system in the UK, then we kind of have to do it now. So, so I kind of felt like shipping Overwatch was a really good place to leave at. And I was fortunate that a number of people who I worked with at Blizzard had then ended up at Riot. So, including Kenny, the recruiter who got me to Blizzard, he was at Riot at that point. So I basically just asked him, like I said, I'm going to move back to the UK. Can I work for Riot 3 days a week? Because I really want to work on my own projects as well. And and like they were good with that. They were fine with that. So basically, that's what I did for the 3 years immediately after Blizzard was I would work for them for Riot remotely Monday to Wednesday on various projects, and then on my own kind of game projects Thursday and Friday of the week. So it was pretty nice situation for 3 years or so.
Cool.
And I got
And then I was going to say you're still in California at the time. You were working freelance for them, yeah.
no, this was back in the UK. So
Okay, right.
so I was working with the time difference, but Riot were like super really laid back about that sort of thing. I mean, I think it helped that I was working on early stages of a lot of projects, so it wasn't like the turnaround time had to be like we need this 8 hours from now. A lot of stuff was just like still blue sky,
Right, yeah.
So there wasn't really that deadline for anything.
Yeah.
But
Was that stuff that's just recently been announced, or was that stuff that,
yeah.
yeah.
So I actually contributed to 4 of those projects in one way or another. So,
Oh wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, mainly I was on the Project L, which was the fighting game. So I did
Right.
a good amount of environment design for that.
Oh, cool.
But then I did a bit on Arcane initially, which is the animated series. So I was
Mm-hmm.
on that when it was really still pretty early. Like they were working with Fortiche, the French studio at that point, but
Right.
still, like they were still just like
Early
writing
days.
the scripts basically.
Yeah.
So that was really cool, like something different to what I was used to. And then I did a bit on Project A,
Mm-hmm.
And then about 6 months on Project F. I'm trying to remember all the
The project names, yeah.
so yeah, I was super fortunate that I got to experience.
Contribute to those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was definitely interesting where when I was out in LA, I got to tour, thanks to my pal Lydia Zanotti, I got to tour Riot
Yeah.
and sit and have lunch with a couple of the guys, and they were kind of talking about my gaming habits, and I was talking about, yeah, well, I'm a fan of Overwatch, and I think recently I would also be playing a lot of Rainbow Six Siege, and they were kind of hinting like, oh yeah, like if you like those games, then you'll definitely enjoy what we're working on. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what you guys are doing. So it only started to click as I got on the plane. I was like, oh, they must be working on a first person shooter. So yeah, it was. And then of course, I think it was a week or two later, obviously just recently, that all got kind of announced and talked about. So yeah, it's been an interesting ride to see that Riot's kind of trying to chip away at a lot of the people's money bags, because they've got an ambitious couple of years ahead of them, I think, with animated series and FPS and card games, and there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So
But I mean, for yourself from having been there, it's like it's a big campus. Like I was,
oh Jesus, yeah,
blown away. I mean, coming from Blizzard, even like I mean, Blizzard's
yeah,
pretty sizable, but then kind of Riot, like the level of facilities and just like the scale of it is pretty damn.
it's ridiculous. I think the one thing that I found was crazy was that the breakfast, lunch, and dinner is paid for them. Like the whole cafeteria thing is free to the employees.
Yeah, and
so
it's like really good food as well, right? It's like
oh god, yeah. There was so, I mean, because I'm vegan, so I mean, like I was like, oh, they might not have things, but then there was just a huge selection of stuff, and tea and coffee juice was all free snacks. There was multiple arcades. There was like sit down places for people to play PC games. It was.
Did you get
so much?
The coffee shop, whatever it is?
Yeah, the smoothie place. Yeah. I got a smoothie. That, Lydia was kind of saying, just pick whatever ingredients you want, but there was kind of pre-made ones. I think I just picked. I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, I got a free smoothie, and
Nice.
Got to see the kind of stage for for the esports stuff.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting, and just walking about and speaking to people, and everyone looks so happy, and they're all having fun in the huge basketball court, and I was just drooling, man. And then we were walking about because Lydia was kind of giving me the mini tour, and one of the guys kind of stopped and was like, "Oh, hey, man, what's happening?" And then we kind of walked on, and Lydia was like, "Do you know who that was?" I was like, "No." He's like, "It's like the owner of the fucking company." I was like, "Oh shit, okay, fair enough." But he was going back to his desk to do some work. He was actually getting back into game dev, so. Yeah, it was really interesting to see the whole process start to finish of that whole company, and the scale of it is just absolutely crazy. And then, of course, within the last couple of weeks, a couple of guys that I knew at Blizzard have actually left to go to Riot. So it's like, yeah, they just attract so much talent, because I think the benefits are really just great for, I think, artists in general. Especially, I think they kind of I would say laid back atmosphere. Like they're a lot of the guys I spoke to who came from different places and different companies have said that the best work-life balance they've ever had
Cool.
working at Riot.
Yeah.
There's a very huge emphasis on that your time is your own once you leave, the studio, and
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to be there to 8-9 o'clock at night. If you've got a family, go home, see them, because their projects sometimes are a bit more of a slow burn than the initial push to get things out quickly. So probably because League is still churning in enough money to keep them spinning over. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting times. It might be an eventual thing that you probably look at once your kids are maybe getting back out of primary school or something, to head back to California and work for Riot. But yeah, but like the campus is just ridiculous. But
Yeah.
but I think that comes part and parcel with the talent that they have there. So
of course. Yeah.
And is that, I mean, I think it would be difficult going back to somewhere like Riot for you, right? Because then you're getting back into those big teams again, and probably less. Although I don't know, I say that I know Lydia's team who were working on stuff. Their team was pretty small. I think again about maybe 15, 20 people. So it's no like you said with Titan, it was like 200. I think their teams are a bit more focused than kind of the Grandioso stuff. So
yeah, I think they got a mix of different team sizes depending on what the scope of the game is and also
the project and stuff.
What stage of the process they're at. I mean, right now I've no desire to like join one of those kind of juggernauts again, but in time maybe down
the line.
I'm happy being in a position where I can sort of sort of set my own schedule and spend a fair amount of time just like experimenting with my own ideas and so on. Like
plus the flexibility for having two young kids as well, because then
definitely. I mean, Blizzard was always really good. Like, I mean, with a few exceptions, like I rarely had to crunch much at all. Like, I felt like if it was asked of me, then it was really necessary. But like generally, I tried to just keep to like a pretty strict like 8 to 5, 8 to 6 schedule, something like that.
Right.
So
always, I think people are just more understanding that you have a family and stuff, and you need to be able to go and see your kids.
For anybody really, like it's important to have downtime. Like I think if you're just on this, you're just perpetually like churning and just like running the risk of getting burnt out. Like you're never going to have any opportunity to really think creatively in your own time. And I find for my own like projects, my own ideas, like I need a certain amount of like time and space to just let my thoughts wander, And I think if it's like constantly at work or you're like constantly thinking about the job, then you're just not going to have any of those breakthroughs for yourself. And you're probably, more than likely going to be a less efficient worker as well. So I kind of feel like if I give 8 to 10 solid hours a day to whoever I'm working for, then that's a really good chunk of time. And like past that point, I'm probably going to start giving you less and less of what I'm able to do. So
I think it's the point of diminishing return, right?
Absolutely.
You get to a point where you're just moving the pencil or the stylus, actually doing anything. But I think it's good when you talk about 8 to 10 hours, because I know for some guys, like that is an 8 to 10 hour day, but then you maybe have an hour at lunch. You maybe get up and walk about, have just a chill and read or something for half an hour. Like your whole day isn't just like sitting at your desk.
No.
For 10 hours, and even getting to be able to go and see what other people are doing, because that will then feed into what you're also doing, that you're not just working in a bubble. So and I think it's interesting where you've still got this passion to have your own project. I think that's something that everybody talks about, that how you always have to have a personal project, and I think it's especially justified at those bigger studios, because you start to feel, like you said, like more of a, not really a number, because I mean Blizzard are very good at keeping people kind of identified in their teams, but you want to have something that's just for you, because you can get lost in those big AAA titles. And
I think it's just a fact of life that certain ideas that you have aren't going to be applicable to whatever it is that you're working on at the time. Even something like Titan, which had a pretty broad scope, I had a lot of ideas for things that just weren't going to fit within that. So I just wanted to always have stuff going on the side that I could just use as kind of a way of improving. Like I did a lot of like kind of visual development projects for a number of years, like purely as a way of making myself do work that I wasn't comfortable doing. Just like come up with an IP or some kind of idea, and then be like, right, I'm going to do all of the environment design for this. Right, I'm going to do all the characters or something, like just to have something to kind of wrap it all up in. Like I think it's hard when you just work in isolation. Like you just sit down and you're like, right, I'm just going to design some characters, but you don't know
Mhm.
what they're for. Like I
Yeah.
really found that like having this overarching kind of brief that was like constantly evolving and growing was just a
Mhm.
really good motivator for me, and really helped me to improve more quickly, just because I was like constantly sort of developing whatever this idea was. Like it was sort of growing, and I was getting more and more excited about, one, that I was improving, and two, that like this sort of IP, this story, whatever it was sort of having a life of its own to some degree. So I've kind of become addicted to like growing ideas of one kind or another, and it's kind of moved more into game development. Like I've been working at developing various prototypes for the last sort of 3-ish years. uh,
Yeah.
but I love that creative process. Like I'm a lot better at starting ideas than I am at finishing them. It's like from
Oh God, yeah.
a major Achilles heel at this point,
Yeah.
but at the same time, like there's something really, really fun, particularly when you put actual, you know, gameplay into something. Like when you come up with an idea and then you start to prove it out, and then you think about, well, what's the aesthetic, what's the setting. Like I find
Yeah.
that like just super rewarding, and I think that's another reason why I'd find it hard to go back to a like big team with hundreds of people. Is like, I like being able to get involved in design as much as art, to be honest. So
Yeah.
um, you know, so
I think,
yeah.
yeah, I think that's interesting what you're talking about, but where, again, when you're working on something like Titan, such a big project, the dial in of that will eventually happen where you're not really churning out new ideas, you're just trying to refine the ones you already have. So
Mhm.
I think forcing yourself to make those new worlds will flex that part of your brain that you're not getting to in your day-to-day job, because like you said, you eventually were just going through the motions, right? High poly, low poly, bake, repeat, rinse.
Yeah.
um, so which is great because you're contributing to this big project, but at the same time you need something that fills your creative soul. And I remember one of my friends talking about this ages ago, where he was keeping a sketch. I don't know if he's really talk about what he's developing, but anyway, no, he wouldn't really care. But he was developing a sketchbook basically of, the animated series Avatar, which was basically originally Aang. Now it was Korra recently,
Mhm.
and it was all about the elements. So to keep him basically sharp and kind of flex that muscle, he was trying to imagine what, and I'll not maybe not talk to what his ideas were, but what he was basically doing was trying to envision the next iteration of the Avatar and what that would look like, because I think the next iteration after war was Earth. So he was trying to figure out,
Ah.
in the Earth Kingdom, what would it look like past, because the Korra was like, the initial one was set kind of, I couldn't even tell you the time period, but then of course Korra was set more in like 1920s, 30s with the cars and the kind of Charleston stuff,
Mhm.
and then he was trying to bring it into maybe like the 40s, 50s, and then see how that would look and how the new main character would look and how powers had evolved or the world had evolved. So he has a sketchbook that's just all visual development for that
Okay.
world, and that's only for him. I mean, I don't think he's ever going to pitch it to the team. Well, the team kind of disappeared. They're working on Dragon Prince now, but yeah, like that whole thing is just for him to keep his creative
Yeah.
mind sharp.
Yeah.
Also building his own video games, so that ideas will then trickle from that into the other books. So, yeah, I think there's definitely merit in finding your own world to build.
I mean, I just, yeah, I really enjoy it, and also like, yeah, it's definitely true that it's fantastic to have a job where you're so passionate about what you're doing that you kind of pour yourself into it, but at the same time, there is always this danger that the thing you're working on might never come out. And having experienced that a number of times, I'm kind of a little bit reticent um, to like fully commit to something just in case it might not work out. And at the same time, like it makes me much more keen to have my own things going all the time, because like if the
Yeah,
thing I've been working on doesn't work out, then it sucks, but I've still had this other thing going the whole time, and I can sort of redouble my efforts into improving that, whatever that thing is. So yeah, you
yeah,
need to have that balance, because you know yeah, if you put like kind of all your eggs in one basket, I mean, you might end up working on something that comes out and is amazing, and like you feel completely fulfilled from it. But chances are that even if you are working on a great game, that like you're gonna want to have something of your own that one day might become, a game in its own right, a film in its own right, whatever.
Well, the story behind the guys, again, because I love this. I mean, I've got tattoos of Aang over my arm and everything because I'm just obsessed with it. But I mean, reading into that book, the kind of art of book, the initial, the first one, you learn about the two creative directors in that project who brought it to life, had worked on several shows before that where, the creative input was not really there. They were just kind of showrunning at the time, or they were putting something together.
Yeah.
In fact, I think one of the shows they worked on before Aang was Invader Zim, which was a kind of huge cartoon back in the day.
Yeah.
That actually just came back. I watched it going to LA on the plane. I watched the Netflix special, the kind of one-off movie they done, and it was incredible. I was pissing myself laughing. There's a time where you will work on these things for a long time, and you'll never really get that chance to make your own things. So I think building those worlds originally in your books, and then we'll just build them in general are great, because then eventually, if you do get the opportunity to pitch something, then you're already got like a whole backstory, a whole world building set. It's more easy for somebody to get on board with that and be like, oh, well, you've already done so much of the footwork, it will be less work for us. So, which is really, really great. And I think that,
you're developing those creative abilities to actually just build a project from scratch as well. Like if you're, if you are on one of these big teams, like I said before, like you're probably going to have to specialize to some degree. And that means that you're not necessarily going to have like a really broad, holistic view of the thing as a whole. Whereas if you're in charge of an entire, IP to some, even if it's only one that you're creating in your head, then you still have to make a lot of bigger artistic decisions that, if you're just, a concept artist or a character artist or something, you're just not going to have the opportunity to do that. So I think it's a good way of like priming yourself when there are no stakes, and then like if you get the opportunity to actually art direct something or be a creative director or whatever, game director, then you'll have done, in theory you'll have done a lot of that work. You'll have kind of gone through a lot of those conversations in your own head before you have to do it for real, sort of thing.
So what's the kind of creative spark that's keeping you going at the moment? Are you developing something still? Is there something that's come out that
and I'm just terrible for like starting different things. Like I've developed like a number of different prototypes. I mean, I'm definitely interested in indie gaming, and most of my favorite games of the last probably 4 or 5 years have all come from the indie side of things. So I'm definitely very inspired by things like Inside and Limbo and Gone Home and Papers, Please, and like all these really cool games that are very focused and very kind of, they feel like very like crafted personal experiences. So when the R&D project that I was on for a couple of years, when that got shelved, I basically decided I was going to start learning how to make my own games, because I wanted to one day get to the position where I could kind of call the shots in terms of what I chose to design or not, and not leave that in somebody else's hands, necessarily leave that decision up to somebody else.
Of course.
So in the past sort of 3 or 4 years, I've been learning how to program and to do things in Unity, and I've made a bunch of different prototypes, some more finished than others. And currently I had something that I was developing for about 6 months that I've kind of paused for a little bit. I mean, I paused it mainly because I went to Brazil and I just had to focus on that sort of full time, and didn't have really much energy or opportunity to continue with it. But
was that Shadow Drop or
no? The thing I've been working on more recently was called Waycaster. It's sort of like a
as well,
adventure thing where you're this little character moving through these environments, and the sort of core mechanic, the hook of it is that you take damage whenever you're in the sunlight, so you have to kind of stay within the shadows, but you can also control the orientation of the light source, so you can basically kind of dynamically like point the light in a direction so that you cast shadows and then create a pathway through the levels that way. So I have like a sort of 15-minute alpha type demo of that I developed up to a certain point, and I'm kind of pretty happy with it as a proof of concept. I mean, I think my main thing right now is like the indie space is just so competitive, and like there's just zero guarantee of any level of success. I think if I was doing this 10 years previously, I would have been a bit more bullish, like particularly if I was doing it before I'd had kids, then I would have kind of gone all in on it. But looking at the landscape as it is now, like you can make an amazing game, and there's still no guarantee that anybody will even see it, let alone buy it. So I'm a little like with kids and a mortgage and all that sort of thing. Like I'm a little reticent to fully commit to something like that. Even though ultimately it's where I want to get to is kind of designing my own products. I'm just still just kind of dipping my toe. Basically, I'm just kind of still
Yeah.
and I still really enjoy artwork and making art, and the jobs that I've had recently have involved some degree of design and prototyping as well. So I'm kind of getting to scratch that itch at the same time. But yeah, in terms of like putting a game out, that sort of I've created or had a big part in, like I'm still a bit away from that, but it's still where I want to get. And I still like in the meantime, like I just really enjoy, like I say, developing ideas and finding new ways of doing things, and just pairing different aesthetics and different settings with a particular idea, that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
like really that's what keeps me interested in what I'm doing, is like combining art and design, and actually sort of using technology to get that stuff running in real time versus like
Yeah.
static imagery is great. Like I still like making concepts and that sort of thing, but like actually having something that's interactive and you can run around it, like there's something pretty magical about that, I think. So I think whatever I do in future, it's going to involve more of that type of thing.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting with the ideas you've had. I mean, one of the first jobs I got out of university was helping on a small indie game called Mask of Semblance, and I think I kind of talked about
Yeah.
this when yeah, Nick, no Nick, but yeah, Nick is the other Nick, not you, Nick, but yeah, Nick Higelis, he is working on Mask of Semblance still and wants that to get produced, but every time they've went to try and get publishing or get people behind it, it's been really, really difficult. And I think because they've got this draw of the whole thing is hand painted, it not only gives them like so much work to do, it also makes it harder for people to kind of pitch in why it will be an aesthetic people want to play. But the love and detail that's went into that game is crazy, and I think it's something that really needs to come out at some point. But for Nick, it's hard to invest that full time energy in it, like you said, because he's just moved and he has to focus on helping out with the bills and stuff. So yeah, if he's not got the full time budget, then it's hard to make it a full time.
And I mean,
reality.
I had opportunities for funding. Like when I was working on a previous idea, Brave Odyssey, which was this kind of open ocean, like boats action RPG kind of game. It looks quite a lot like Wind Waker. There's a bunch of it on my ArtStation. And when I was developing that, like, some of the imagery and stuff, like, got a fair amount of attention on Twitter and whatnot. And, like, Microsoft got in touch. So I was talking to, them for a while. And then I've had various other publishers get in touch about one idea or another. But, like, I still just feel like the kind of deals that people offering you, oftentimes the terms just really aren't very good for you as an indie developer. Like maybe if you're like single and you don't have necessarily the same amount of responsibilities that I do, but like if you're just like working on the game, like one or two of you, and you just need money for like rent and some ramen or something for a couple of years, like then work. But like it's either that or it's like somebody wanting to invest in a studio, say, but like the terms that they're offering you are just like not great. So I'd rather like still try and pick and choose a bit and get to a position where I'm in a really strong I'm in a kind of strong position and be able to dictate the terms to more of a degree. But I don't know.
I think if you have that killer app and people can see that you do have the idea that's going to maybe change the landscape, then they're more keen to invest a bit more capital. But if it seems like something that's maybe not going to be resonating with people really super well, or
it's just a niche, or it's just harder to tell, right? Like then I totally understand, because like I say, like it's so oversubscribed out there. Like there's thousands of games coming out each month on Steam. It's just crazy. Like
I think it's even finding the platform or the audience, because I know even just recently, we were just talking about this, at the start of the night, where I'm going to be involved in the kind of first launch of Stadia.
Yeah.
But they're also just looking recently for people who have new ideas to come to that platform exclusively, because next week when they launch, they've got one exclusive game which is called Guilt, and it's one that's just for Stadia. It's not coming out, I don't think, anywhere else, but a smaller indie game again. But I think they had a platform that they knew was going to be new and wouldn't have a lot of exclusives. So I think they just offered up, here's this idea, we'll pitch it, we'll make it for you guys exclusively if you give us back. And so I think that's, yeah. And then, of course, Xbox are doing the same now. Recently at E3, they announced that they just bought a ton of studios, including, rebuying back Double Fine and making that a part of their studio again. But yeah, I think it's trying to find the platform that will resonate with your audience the most. And I think even recently I did send Nick a quick link for the Stadia devs thing and say, look, they're probably looking for people or looking for ideas. So maybe pitch and you might have more success, because to Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo, that might be a dime a dozen. But then you never know. Although Nintendo seem to have this whole what is it called? Is it Pets? Port everything to Switch. So, because people were actually making fun of it, like, oh yeah, I mean, can you imagine if they ported something like The Witcher? That would be crazy. And then, like, the next Direct, they were like, oh, The Witcher's coming out in Switch. So, yeah, which is a technical marvel in itself for that game to run on the Switch. So, yeah. So I mean, yeah, your future is probably a mixed bag of, like you said, trying
I'm kind of I'm going to continue working with this Studio Wildlife for a while. Like, I've got a bunch of friends who are there, and it's an interesting studio. There's a lot happening there. They're very ambitious. So my plan is to do some stuff for them, and then there's another couple of things like I can't talk about right now, but like there's definitely a lot of there's some interesting stuff out there, and hopefully some opportunities where I'm going to get to sort of flex the like game design, game prototyping side of things, as well as doing art. So that's sort of, I'm just sort of waiting for everything to fall into place, basically. But it's actually like the last couple of weeks, like it's the first time I've had vacations, obviously, over the last few years at various points, but like I took a little bit of time off work, and it's been like majorly worthwhile, because I don't know, at times it can feel like I've been doing the job for 15, 16 years and like without a break or something. So it's actually been pretty good to just like sit back and like noodle on a few bits of artwork and just like learn to do a few things and all that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Rediscover your kind of artistic self.
Yeah, I think you have to. Like, I think you have to remind yourself like why you do it and what you actually enjoy about it. It's been interesting, because like for a long time I sort of have just sort of flowed along without having to worry about it too much. But definitely like the last couple of months, I sort of started to have some doubts about like, what is it I actually enjoy doing? Like, why am I excited about this? So, like, it's been a really good opportunity to just like, just start enjoying it for what it is again, I think.
Yeah, which I think is refreshing. I think to hear always is that even people at the higher levels of the game still have those moments where like you said, you're trying to rethink about where do I kind of fit in, what is my maybe no purpose, but what is my identity for making these games, and why do I still want to do this? So I think it's very interesting when you see people at your level, particularly, still reassessing those questions.
Yeah, well, I'm getting quite old, so I have to like, so I have to have a midlife crisis at some point. So
yeah, well, I mean, I'm kind of in a unique position where I just recently turned 34, but I had the unfortunate idea at 28 that I wanted to leave my job as an engineer and go back and chase my dreams of working in games or work as an artist, and it's been an interesting 6 years, but I'm always kind of at this point where I'm still questioning, was it a good idea or not? But I mean, I'm definitely poorer, but I'm probably a lot happier than I was.
I think as long as you feel like you're making progress and you're enjoying the journey, then that's what's really important, I think. And I don't know, I feel privileged that I've chosen something as a job that feels like a sort of lifelong pursuit. I think I'm always going to be artistic in some form or another, and I'm always going to be curious about stuff. Like that's one of the things that I like most about being an artist is like maintaining that kind of childlike curiosity for things, and still like wanting to learn, even if only in a superficial way, like being intrigued by things around you, and not just kind of going through life in a sort of blind kind of mundane sort of a way. Like I still get excited about nerdy little things, and like I'm still going on Wikipedia all the time to try and think of interesting ways to frame a particular idea or whatever. So I think it's all I think it's one of the best things you can choose to do with your time, personally.
Yeah, I think it's interesting with me because I think where I've struggled the last maybe year or two is coming from a university background and then heading into, I've got an office now where I'm kind of talking to you from, and I do most of my work. And I look back at it, between my networking and going to events and the podcast and getting my degree. I mean, I have done a lot of things I think I'm really proud of, but I think the hard thing for me now is that I'm stuck in an office on my own every day with no one around me. And I'm definitely one of those types of people who feeds off energy of other people. Yeah. Again, when I was at Axis, it was great going in there every day and just being surrounded by all those super talented people. And I know that it was probably one of the better parts of my life when I got to go in there and speak to people and interact and feed off their energy. And I think it's hard now because I'm on my own, and now I'm at a point where I need to build that portfolio and get a job, but it's harder for me, I think, to find the motivation sometimes because I'm stuck here on my own. So
yeah, I know, I get it. Like I'm in a at a different point in my career, but definitely in a similar position in terms of like, it can be isolating, like working remotely. So I'm sure, man. Like you keep plugging away, you're going to get that opportunity, and you'll be surrounded by talented, interesting people in no time. So I'll just keep going with it,
Yeah. Okay, right. Well, I think that's a kind of good point for us to talk about ending this and letting you get back to the rest of your night, because I'm sure you've got plenty of stuff to be doing, including putting the kids to bed and getting ready for your next day of working. But it was definitely awesome speaking to you.
All right, yeah. It's been awesome. Yep.
Yeah, and of course, for you guys who have listened, this has definitely been a longer episode. But if you've got any questions for Nick or any other things you want to talk about, just hit them up in the comments. I'll leave all kind of Nick's details, his ArtStation below, and you guys can help us out by leaving a like or a comment or sharing this with any of your art friends. My thanks again to Nick for coming on and speaking to us. And just stay tuned because we're going to have more awesome people to speak to very, very soon. Trying to get them on is always harder, but it will pay off eventually, I promise. So again, thanks to Nick, thanks to you guys for listening, and we will see you guys later. Thanks.